the timeshare cancellation guy and founder of Wesley Financial Group. And I want to set the record straight. I am not an attorney. I've never wanted to be an attorney. And the truth is, I really don't even like attorneys. If I sound like an attorney, I'll apologize. But what I've learned in my 15 years in the timeshare cancellation business is you don't need to be an attorney to get folks out of their timeshare. At Wesley, we've helped over 40,000 families cancel their timeshare, and I want to share with you how we do it. Just give my office a call. I guarantee if we take you as a client, we'll get you out of your timeshare or you'll pay nothing. Attorneys, this was meant to be funny, so please don't sue me, especially my friend Kenneth from Black River Falls, Wisconsin.
Call now for your free timeshare exit info kit. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454.
A deadly accident in Egypt.
Officials say 6 people died and 9 were injured when a tourist submarine sank off the Egyptian coast. The submarine was carrying 45 passengers, all of them Russian. Emergency crews rescued 29 people off one of the beaches in the tourist promenade area in the Red Sea resort of Hurghada. The Russian consulate says those who were injured are in stable condition. The submarine was out on a regular tour to view coral reefs when it sank about a half a mile from shore. It's not known what caused it to sink. I'm Mike Hempel.
Multiple wildfires raging across South Korea's southern regions for days now have killed 27 people and destroyed more than 300 structures, as thousands of personnel and dozens of helicopters have mobilized to battle that country's worst ever blazes. Breaking news and analysis at townhall.com. A ruling on ghost guns.
The Supreme Court is upholding regulations on so-called ghost guns put in place by the Biden administration. The decision on the case out of Texas was 7-2. Justice Gorsuch writing the majority's opinion. Former President Biden put the regulation into effect in the summer of 2022. The Trump administration could move to rescind the regulation. Tasha Stevens reporting.
In Boston, the World Figure Skating Championship paused for a tribute to those who died in a plane crash on their way back from a camp for up-and-coming skaters this winter. Speakers remembered the more than 24 members of the skating community who died in that January 29th crash in Washington. The victims' names were shown on the scoreboards during the tribute, along with their home clubs in Boston, Washington, Philadelphia, Delaware, and Virginia. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The latest news.
Nothing happened. The attack was totally successful.
There's a lot of journalists in this city who have made big names for themselves, making up lies about this president.
Because of that Afghanistan withdrawal, we have damaged our credibility.
He was texting war plans.
Nobody was texting war plans.
Whether it's formally classified or not, it is very sensitive.
He's a very good man, and he will continue to do a good job.
101.9 and 94.1.
St. Louis's #1 for conservative talk.
News Talk STL. This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Stifel, serving investors for over 130 years. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm meteorologist Leah Hill with your first alert forecast. Watching for some morning showers and the occasional rumble of thunder. It's pretty scattered activity out there, but at times you'll be using the windshield wipers, and it couldn't hurt to have some rain gear on hand today, especially if you're heading out to the Cardinals game. Do watch for some scattered showers and an isolated thunderstorm during game time. Temperatures nearing 70 degrees. It is a first alert weather day, as some storms tonight could produce hail. That's your first alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Leah Hill.
I am an atheist. I really am a liberal, but I'm also a conservative.
No matter your side.
I'm a Democrat. I'm just a bit angry, frustrated conservative.
No matter your inclination.
I'm probably a liberal, maybe more in the middle.
We're here for your place to talk about it.
I'm the progressive liberal Democrat that you said is afraid to call you. St. Louis's #1 for conservative talk.
I'm sure we'll have a robust conversation.
News Talk STL. This hour of Colombo and Company brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com.
Your finest hour. Your finest hour.
It sure seems like a long time to me. I had the honor and the privilege of being one of the very first interviews on News Talk STL when News Talk STL first went online back in July of 2021. And for about 2 full years, I had an opportunity to host a Saturday morning show, the Paul Curtman Show, the News Talk STL. And ever since then, I've had wonderful opportunities to continue to come in, comment, give some analysis and some updates with Mike Ferguson, with Tony Colombo, with Vic Porcelli playing the Be or Not the Be. And now I get to fill in for my good friend, Tony Colombo. And I tell you what, Stel, I'm glad to be back here with you also. You are such a wonderful guy. I'm looking forward to spending some time with you today.
Great to hear from you, Paul. And we're ready to go here. We've got a couple of great guests coming up, so it's all yours, buddy.
All right. Hey, thanks, Stel. And he did say we had some great guests coming up. We do have one coming up later on this hour. In the second segment, we got State Representative Justin Sparks. I'm looking forward to talking to him because he's dealing with an issue in Jefferson City right now that I had to deal with whenever I was in Jefferson City back in 2013. It involves the St. Louis City Police Department. We'll talk to him a little bit about that. I'm interested to swap a few thoughts with him since now we've both had to deal with this issue from Jefferson City. And then in the second hour, the beginning of the second hour, just after 3 o'clock, we'll be talking to Randy Tobler. So Dr. Tobler will be joining us. Got some questions with him related to fraud, related to Doge a little bit, but also overlapping into the medical industry. So I'm looking forward to talking to Dr. Tobler. But right now, Stel, one of the things that I've been looking forward to talking about right now is this new bill that's making its way through Washington, D.C. It's just been introduced, and it is called the No Partisan Radio and Partisan Broadcasting Services Act. And what I absolutely love about the way this bill was titled and introduced is in the bill itself. The bill designed to eliminate taxpayer funding from this liberal-leaning public media, taxpayer-funded media, is it actually has NPR and PBS in the title. No Partisan Radio and No Partisan Broadcasting Services Act. Hey, in just a minute, Stel, I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't mind gearing up clip 1 and clip 3, because whenever they're having hearings and they're interviewing these departments and agencies that get this public funding, this is our opportunity to really ask questions and really expose some of these bureaucrats for who they really are. So, Stel, could you go ahead and play clip 1 for me? You there, Stel?
I am, buddy. Hold on just a second.
Okay. Hey, no worries. Hey, while you're getting that ready to go, I'm just going to broadcast a little bit about what's going on here. What you're about ready to hear is Jim Jordan ask Catherine Maher from NPR whether or not NPR is biased. And she's got 2 clips that we're going to play. First, we'll play clip 1, and then later on, we're going to play clip 3. But in this clip where she's talking with Jim Jordan, she goes into detail about how she's never seen the evidence, but clearly there's so much evidence, and we'll go over some of it. Stel, you just let me know when you're ready, because I think the people would love to hear this clip.
All set to go.
Is NPR biased?
Congressman, I have never seen any instance of political bias determining editorial decisions. No.
Well, Mr. Berliner, in his story last year, wrote, in the D.C. area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Is that accurate?
We do not track the numbers or the voter registration, but I find that
was award-winning journalist who worked 25 years at NPR, Mr. Berliner. Was he lying when he wrote that?
I am not presuming such. I just we don't track that information about our journalists.
87 to 0, and you're not biased.
I think that is concerning if those numbers are accurate.
It's concerning. I mean, it wasn't 44-43. It wasn't 60-27. It wasn't 70-17. It wasn't even 80-7. It was 87 Democrats, 0 Republicans, and you say NPR is not biased.
There you have it. There you have Catherine Meyer saying that there's no evidence of any biases with NPR. Now, I just want to be very clear. When we're talking about NPR, we're really talking, let's go a little bit deeper. It's NPR, it's public television, it's any kind of mass communication, government-funded communication service. Now, when Congressman Jim Jordan brought out that the balance there is all these Democrats and zero Republicans, that alone is in and of itself alarming. And for another journalist to be able to figure that out, but the people at NPR themselves not to know that, it is completely it completely baffles the mind how people who run an organization and call themselves journalists get outed by another journalist from another organization. But clearly there's bias at NPR. Clearly there's bias in the mainstream media. And we know that there's bias in NPR. If we were going to run through just a quick list of a lot of these biased stories, folks, they're going to be right up on top of your mind. They're going to be top of mind for you because it's so recent, just in recent history. What about the 2020 BLM riots? Both in the mainstream media and in public communications, PBS, NPR, mostly peaceful protests. Remember this, while cities are burning down. Mostly peaceful protests. These allegations against Brett Kavanaugh, they received blanket coverage. Allegations against Joe Biden, those were often dismissed, even minimized, even back then. What about media bias and reinforcing the big tech platforms? They were suppressing and throttling the conservative viewpoints online, especially during COVID. NPR, they were right up there at the top. We could continue to go down this list if we wanted to. But the media, the claim that media bias is just about how stories are told, but it's about which stories get told at all. The fact that they leave stories out, we call this omission bias. Take, for example, and this is one of the things that came up in the committee, but the whole Hunter Biden laptop. And she herself concluded, hey, we made some mistakes. So if you're making mistakes by not covering the Hunter Biden laptop case, if that's a mistake, well, you call it tomato, I call it tomato, right? I wouldn't call it a mistake necessarily. I'd call it omission bias. It's just happens to be during the lead up to one of the most important elections in recent history, the election of Donald Trump. And in order to try to make sure that he stays out of office, there's this whole story about the Hunter Biden laptop, and NPR doesn't cover it. And what do they say? They just say, oopsies, oopsies. No, that was just a mistake. That wasn't bias. No evidence of bias. Come on, give me a break. Wake up and smell the garbage. That's exactly what we have with NPR. That's exactly what we have with these publicly funded communication services. And I just got to point this out too. I remember being a kid and watching Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers, and they always had these like sound bites at the end when they would play like a little cartoon or a butterfly landing on a flower or something. And they would say, paid for by viewers like you. And as I was growing up, I knew it was National Public Radio. I knew that it was public broadcasting system. But as I was growing up, for whatever reason, I would see these telethons where they were out raising money. And it was almost like they were trying to convince us that all the money that they had was just donations from the public. No, not donations from the public. When they said paid for by viewers like you, folks, they were rubbing it in our faces because they're taking our tax dollars. We go to work. We earn money for our family. Some of that money gets taken away in tax dollars, and some of that money goes to PBS. PBS uses that to make puppets. Our children watch those puppets. PBS thinks, see, we're doing a good thing, so we deserve your taxpayer dollars. Meanwhile, when it comes to elections, we're just going to leave some things out to kind of steer you to the candidate that we want you to vote for. Omission bias. And you can continue to go on down the list. You can go down the list all the way down from BLM to COVID. You can talk about the Trump-Russia collusion narrative. NPR had a say in that. The whole Find People hoax whenever they wanted to target Donald Trump. You've got people in the public sector. The point that I'm making here is this. When your tax dollars go, and I'm going to kind of call back to a quote by Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson once said that if people are compelled to pay taxes for things that they abhor and they find sinful, he defined that whole process of taking people's tax dollars and using it against their best interest or against their choices for the way that they want to live in America. He defined that as tyranny. Like that's the word that he used. And what's been going on now? And what is Doge doing? All this money. Now it's finally on the chopping block. The only thing, folks, the only thing that has to happen is this. We have to make sure that Congress actually follows through on everything that they've been saying they're going to do in the campaign and everything that they say they're going to do whenever they're being interviewed by some MAGA-loving social media influencer. Everybody in Congress right now, all the Republicans at least, they love Doge. They love the idea of the No Partisan Radio and Partisan Broadcasting Services Act. They love the idea of defunding these organizations. They love the idea of rooting out the fraud, waste, and abuse. But let's not forget that most of the Republicans that are there right now, that are applauding and cheering and clapping the Doge efforts to eliminate all this wasteful spending or corrupt spending, just remember, they're the ones that have also been there for years or decades, allowing it to happen. And so even whether it's PBS or whether it's NPR, we have to make sure that Congress follows through on their bills, like this one, the No Partisan Radio and Partisan Broadcasting Services Act. This is great. I love it. It's music to my ears. I feel like all my dreams are coming true. Everything I've ever wanted as a conservative, everything's like in play now. Between Doge, between the way we're just not letting ourselves be walked all over by our so-called friends and allies, the fact that we actually have a strong leader who's appointing capable people to different cabinet positions, it's like all of our wildest dreams as conservatives are coming true. You know what is going to bring us to an abrupt wake up? It's when Republicans in Congress and in the Senate aren't able to follow through on everything they said they were going to do. They've got the numbers. They should be able to do it. But my fear, folks, my fear is that this bill to defund NPR and PBS, just like all the other Doge-related issues, my fear is this. My fear is that these bills are being put forward, so we talk about them on the radio like I'm doing right now. And then that's going to be used to trump up the conservative credentials of whoever the bill sponsor is and whoever the co-sponsors are. They're going to do some Sunday shows. They're going to have some sound bites. They're going to have some really provocative social media posts that get thousands and thousands of likes and shares. And then it's going to go away. They're not going to fight for it. They're just going to let it die in committee. Or they're going to be off to the next issue and they're going to try to ride the wave of popularity on the next issue. What's the next issue that's coming up that they have to make sure that they get out in front of in order to show people that they're leading? That's my fear. My fear is that Republicans are the same as they were 5 years ago, the same as they were 15 years ago, and they're all hat, no cattle. They're just not going to follow through on stuff. We have a committee right now in Congress that is designed to work in concert with Doge. And what the committee should be doing is the committee should be introducing legislation that starts to eliminate the spending that's been going to these departments and agencies and NGOs and USAID and everywhere else. But how far is it going to go? And then when it gets to the Senate, is the Senate going to be on board? Or is the Senate going to use that as a negotiation chip and say, oh, yeah, we'll pass your Doge bill, but we want to get these bills passed. And then we're going to find a way to bottleneck everything and choke all the life out of it until the next election cycle comes around. And we've gotten Doge. We got a website with list item after item after item after item after item of wasteful spending or abusive spending or more people, more names of people that should be arrested. And then nothing happens. And then these people are just going to go out and campaign about all the so-called work that they did. So that's my fear. I am super pumped about the conversation that we're having right now. Because it's a conversation that conservatives have been dying to have for a long time and have people take serious. And we are taking it serious, but we just got to take it a little bit more serious. We want to see some teeth. behind that tongue. We want to make sure you can't just talk, but you can bite too. Hey, in a few minutes, we're going to be joined by State Representative Justin Sparks. Highly interested in this conversation. Make sure you stick around and come back. You're listening to Paul Curtman fill in for Tony Colombo right here at News Talk STL, Colombo and Company.
If you find yourself feeling out of place in the world, it's comforting to know conservative values haven't been abandoned everywhere.
Thanks for being my voice in all this.
This is News Talk STL.
There are people out there that feel the way that I feel and say what I say.
Welcome home.
Nate Lucas here for the Village Bar in the heart of De Pere. Since 1948, the Village Bar has been the go-to destination for delicious food, cold drinks, and unbeatable atmosphere. Savor their famous wings, burgers, and onion rings, or grab a drink from their fully stocked bar. Catch all the big games and enjoy the company of their friendly staff. Plus, don't miss the 1879 Distillery, a one-of-a-kind experience right next door. The Village Bar offers the best value in town. Find the Village Bar on Facebook and come experience where history meets great times. You'll be glad you did.
As you know, Vincent's is not just my favorite jeweler. Vincent's is my only jeweler. And I was in recently looking at lab-grown diamonds. These are not glass. They are actual diamonds, but they cost a fraction of a natural diamond. You can check them out at Vincent's.com, or better yet, see these lab-grown diamonds in person. You're going to be amazed at the beauty and the price. Vincent's Jewelers, Vincent'sJewelers.com.
At Complete Forestry Mulching, we're not just clearing land, we're creating possibilities. Brian Akers, owner and longtime supporter of News Talk STL, and our team helps property owners reclaim their land by eliminating invasive species and unwanted brush. Whether you're creating hunting paths, expandable usable space, or establishing clear property lines, we'll transform challenging terrain into pristine landscapes. Our state-of-the-art equipment doesn't just clear, it creates a protective layer of natural mulch, preventing erosion and keeping your soil healthy for years to come. Take control of your property today and save $500 on a full day of forestry mulching services. But hurry, this offer won't last long. Call Complete Forestry Mulching at 314-805-9902, 314-805-9902, or find us on Facebook. Complete Forestry Mulching. Together, let's clear the path to your property's future.
The Democrat Party is going to have to go back toward the center.
News, analysis, and opinion.
I've never called a talk show before, but this just irked me.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
And welcome back to Colombo and Company here on News Talk STL. This is your host, Paul Curtman, filling in for Tony Colombo today. Really glad to be able to do this. Man, I tell you what, I remember when I came home from the Marine Corps, listening to the radio and listening to Tony Colombo on the radio. And as I finished going through college and I got into work and just began to have a career, and then I got elected to Jefferson City, every time I turned on the radio, there's Tony Colombo, and now I get to fill in for him, and it's great. Thanks again, Tony, for letting me fill in for you. Hey, right now we're going to be joined by our next guest. He is a member of the Missouri House of Representatives, has a very distinguished career in law enforcement, and I want to talk to him about the issue that they've recently dealt with in Jefferson City, an issue that I had to deal with when I was there back in 2013. So let's welcome our next guest, State Representative Justin Sparks. Good afternoon, Justin.
Hello, Paul. Thanks for having me on. You're doing a great job.
Hey, thanks a lot, Justin. Really appreciate that. So you've been now in the legislature, I would say. Now, I was there for 8 years. You're going to be coming up on 8 years before too long. I would say at this point, though, you are a seasoned veteran. Like, you know the process, you know the system, and you know the issues. Some of them kind of seem cyclical. The question I want to talk to you about, though, I remember back in 2013. In 2013, it was one of the very first issues that we dealt with when I was, I think I was maybe a freshman or sophomore legislator. And I didn't even know, I had no idea that the St. Louis Police Department was actually governed from Jefferson City by the state. The city of St. Louis wasn't actually really in control of the police department. It was the leadership everything was from out of Jefferson City. And the reason that is the case goes all the way back to the Civil War. And so in 2013, we dealt with an issue. And of course, we're thinking we need to return the police department back to St. Louis and let them govern it, let them manage it. But now when I turn on the news, I'm seeing that Jefferson City is saying, oh, we want it back. We got to bring this back. Can you talk to me a little bit about those discussions that have been had in Jefferson City? Why is it after about 11 or 12 years, there's this reversal of this policy? Because I think most conservatives, most Republicans would say, hey, you need to make sure that it's a local control issue. So what's actually going on with this situation?
Yeah, great question. And you're exactly right. It goes all the way back. And when that the control of the police department was returned to the city of St. Louis, that was exactly the thought process, that it would be more efficient, that it would lower crime, it would increase morale, it would do a lot of good things. And what we saw was the exact opposite. So this grand experiment that essentially we put the city of St. Louis through and the police department through was a huge abject failure. And the reason for that is the advent of blue cities, red states, blue states, and extreme leftist policies and the politicization of law enforcement. This is what we're talking about would be defund the police and everything else that surrounded defund the police. It really came to a head and exploded onto the national scene in 2014 with Ferguson. But the city of St. Louis had been in decline as far as their police department goes for some time before that. And police officers had been leaving. And what you saw was the police department was being ran incredibly poorly as far as infrastructure, vehicle maintenance, and the horribly destructive policies of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You had officers that actually had to sue and win for being passed over for promotions based on their skin color. And this would be reverse racism. So white sergeants, white officers who were very qualified for positions would apply for promotion and be passed over and would be told, a major factor is their gender or the color of their skin. And so they sued and they won. And so when you see things like that, that's poisonous and toxic to an institution, any institution, but especially the police department. And so it became apparent with crime and spiraling out of control in the city of St. Louis, as it has in so many other cities, but also just the institution of policing in the city of St. Louis failing. It was having a net negative effect on the rest of the state. And that's when the legislature decided we had to get involved.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I can understand, especially since 2013, because man, it seems like over the last 10 or 12 years, America has really gone through a rough patch. And the violence in St. Louis, we've had multiple riots. Here's my question. Is there going to be a plan? I think most people would agree that clearly the government that governs closest to home usually governs best. Is that part of the conversation, though? Like, is there going to be a time where this does go back to St. Louis? Are there benchmarks that are being put in place that we're going to be measuring the administration of the city or the crime rates to see when we do this? Or is it kind of like, you know what, we're not even going to discuss sending it back. We're just going to let St. Louis City just try to get their act together. We'll revisit this later. Is there a plan going forward to put it back? Or is it just like, we've already tried this once, we're not doing it again?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a little bit of a misnomer to say that the police department is going to actually be governed by Jefferson City, because the way this bill and legislation was constructed was very purposeful in that the governor would appoint a board and that there would be other stakeholders in the city that would appoint members as well to a board of police commissioners that is a typical style of governance over a police department. And that the board of police commissioners would still be residents of the city of St. Louis. So yes, in fact, the control of the board of police commissioners who appoints and things like that originates with the governor, of course, and others like the mayor, but they are all residents of the city of St. Louis. So the people that are actually going to be controlling the police department on that board of police commissioners are going to be St. Louis City residents. And I think that's important.
Okay. Yeah, well, that makes a little bit of sense. I do want to switch gears a little bit because I've also been dying to ask you this. Now, I haven't spoke to a member of the legislature in Jefferson City, it's been a few months. My work has got me moving a little bit. So I have a question, because Donald Trump got elected back in 2016. And when I was in the legislature, I remember being asked the question by other people in the legislature on the left, do you guys support Donald Trump? Because he was a completely different candidate, right? He shows up and everything, like he just changed the game completely. And probably not our traditional Republican candidate, right? And so there was a lot of Republicans at the time that were saying, no, we don't support him, or we do support him. And even at the federal level, Republicans were being told, hey, it's smart if you distance yourself from him. And everybody in the news media said he wasn't going to win. And then bam, pulls off a landslide. And then immediately the tone in Jefferson City kind of began to change and shift a little bit as we kind of begun to align ourselves to Donald Trump. This time around, I know that there's a Doge committee in Jeff City, but do you get an overall sense of a more robust and enthusiastic alignment of the state capitol with the federal administration under the leadership of Donald Trump? Or does it still feel the same way that it did a couple of years ago when Biden was president?
You know, I love that question, because that's a fascinating discussion. So you might have people like me who, when Donald Trump first arrived on the scene, you're like, oh, my idea of a Republican is Abraham Lincoln. And Donald Trump's no Abraham Lincoln, right? Okay. But Donald Trump's not a politician in the traditional sense, just like you said. And, you know, he kind of was a man for these times, right? Because that's kind of what we needed. We needed a wrecking ball to smash a bureaucracy that was more corrupt than any of us ever even knew about it. Second time around, he comes on the scene, and I'll tell you this. So you had that type of Republican, which would be like a purist. But then you have the other type of Republican, who I would consider a very establishment, the political system candidate, right? And they weren't on board with Trump either, because they didn't think he was going to win. So many of the members of leadership in the Republican Party in Missouri, and who are currently in control of the legislature, they didn't endorse Trump. And the reason for that was I really believe they didn't think that he had a chance of winning. And so when he did, in fact, win with a mandate, and it showed that he was going to be overwhelmingly influential, you saw the State House fall in with Washington, D.C., and Make America First and Make America Healthy Again, almost completely in lockstep, which is something that we didn't see the first time, I think. So this time around, it's completely different. It's the Trump train, and everybody decided to get on board.
Well, I think that's good. I really like the Doge efforts that's really kind of taking root around the country. And you may not know this, Justin, but when I was in office, I was the first chairman of the Committee on Government Efficiency. And at the time, we did some work. We did a lot of investigation. We traveled the state. I was trying to be gentle about this, and I wanted to cut costs without cutting corners. That's, was my messaging to people. But we discovered so much fraud, waste, and abuse that was going on just in the way our money was being spent. Some of it really maybe not outright fraudulent, but clearly you could give people that impression with how loose we were with the way some of our money was being spent. And so that culminated in some legislation that went nowhere. And like nobody cared. It was a lot of good talk, but at the time it wasn't the issue that excited people. But I really see that whole shift has really that whole conversation has shifted, and now that's kind of taken a precedent in Missouri right now. Do you see the conversations about eliminating fraud, waste, and abuse, tightening down on our financial situation, making sure every tax penny is being spent on something for the taxpayers that fits within the confines of the role of government? Do you think that that's actually going to go somewhere? Are you guys going to have better success than I did back in 2015?
No, we're not.
Oh no. No,
and the problem,
Justin, my worst fears.
The problem is too many people have made too much money, and their careers hinge upon that waste, fraud, and abuse. It just is what it is, and too many folks are invested deeply in the system that we have had for so long. So just like what Trump has tried to do and is doing, and the opposition that he's receiving, there's a lot of folks on both sides of the aisle that have absolutely no interest in actually doing anything substantive. And because you were in the legislature, you know this better than most people, is we often will do a lot of things that look like we're doing something or addressing an issue, but substantively does very little.
Yeah, in the last segment, I talked about just that when I was talking about this new bill that's designed to cut federal funding from public broadcasting. And it's a great bill. It's a great bill to introduce and tell people about. But a lot of times politicians are really looking to introduce legislation so that way it makes its way to social media, not to the governor's desk or not to the president's desk. And that's a very real thing that people who are trying to do the work actually have to contend with.
Yep, you're exactly right. We have to deal with that every day. And in fact, unfortunately, it's like that on every single issue. And sometimes it's on purpose. These bills will come up. For example, I had an ESG, environmental social governance bill that was to push back on the woke agenda in corporate America that was affecting Missouri. And, a lot of like the Missouri Pension Fund, for heaven's sakes, was opposed to the bill because they didn't want to sever relationships with BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street. And so, they had these pre-existing financial relationships with woke corporations. And they were really, really afraid of severing those things, even though it was the better thing for Missourians. And so that's just kind of an example of trying to push against a very well entrenched system of bureaucracy that's been in place for a very long time.
Yep. I would 100% agree with that. I have told people before when I got to the legislature, there was a lobbyist there. I think he was a World War II veteran, but he was a lobbyist and he had fought in World War II, and that was back in 2013 or 15. And so people want the term limits and they want to have a good checks and balances on their elected officials, but the deep state, and I'm not saying this gentleman or anybody else was, I was just using that as an example of how long some people are there, but we don't know who those people are. And there is all these relationships that wind up carrying money, taxpayer dollars, in places that taxpayers never intended it to go. So it's one of those very, very real things. In the legislature right now, I know that you guys have already had your spring break. And then we got April and we got May. And the only constitutional mandate, really, that the legislature has is to pass the budget. Is this budget going to be, it seems like every year it's a bigger budget than the year before. Is this budget going to be bigger? And if so, where is everybody at currently in the budget process? Are the bills already being voted on, or is the budget already completely finished?
So you'll understand this term. The budget is in the markup phase. We haven't brought up the bills yet. We have not voted on them. They haven't come out yet. They are in the final preparation period. And the governor proposed a budget that would have increased the state budget by $2 billion. From what I'm hearing, the House budget proposal will actually reduce the current budget by several $billion. Wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be amazing. Thoughts and prayers, Justin.
Yep. Yeah, you kind of know.
You guys have your work cut out for it if you're going to be trying to cut a budget, especially by several $1 billion. That would be a first in my memory. How's that discussion going so far?
Well, it's going well, and what I keep trying to tell people is it's not about smashing the budget and like doom and gloom. But what it is about is it doesn't take a rocket science or a mathematician or a financial wizard to understand that over half our budget comes from the federal government. The federal government is having trouble, literally will run out of money by August if they don't increase the debt ceiling. And we have to lower interest rates and print more money regardless, because we're printing $1 trillion every 100 days. So when you know how intrinsically we're connected on the state budget to the federal budget, you can understand that there is cuts coming. There is financial pain coming. We should get out ahead of it. We should identify waste, fraud, and abuse, and hopefully get some money back in the people's pockets so that they can do something better with it. And I think that those conversations are being had, and I think they're starting to gain traction.
Well, I think if Donald Trump is able to get his way, like if for example, the Department of Education just goes the way of the dodo bird, then all this money that currently is supposed to go to the federal government and then get earmarked for education purposes. I know that President Trump would like that money to come back to the states in the form of school choice opportunities. So is this a discussion when you're talking about how we're tied to the federal government in terms of money? Are we already beginning to steer the conversation? Like, what are we going to do in the event that now we suddenly have all this federal money, but also that comes back to us, but the freedom to use it how we really need to use it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything it's incredible how when you get a strong executive, whether it's in the governor's mansion or the White House, with strong policy and the will to see it through, it's unbelievable how everything flows downhill and everybody gets on board. And that's refreshing, because when you're just talking about things like school choice, really introducing the concept of competition in schools, school districts, and making kids have the ability to go to the school of their choice, to get the education that they need so that they can have the best shot at a successful future that as they can for parents. Let me tell you something, like it changes the whole perspective of everything in our country. And what he's proposing of things like getting rid of the Department of Education empowers the educational possibilities on the state level, which is great. It's a wonderful thing. We can really start federalism, right? We can really start to take control of our own destiny in Missouri and really start to see a future where we prosper. And so I'm hopeful.
Good. Yeah, I'm hopeful too. And I think you're spot on when you say it all depends really on the strong executive. And quite frankly, that's really the way that it's supposed to be. Like, you want a strong executive. You do want some agendas, but the representatives of the people, they really, our state representatives, our U.S. congressmen have got to be taking their cues from the people. And when the people overwhelmingly, like you mentioned at the beginning of the segment, vote for somebody like Donald Trump, clear mandate, it's not so much really about following the executive as it is just following the will of the people who loudly spoke in favor of all these reforms, including getting rid of Department of Education, doing things like finding out how to take tax dollars away from USAID, which was sending money to organizations run by leftist politicians. Like, it's insane. But I'm hopeful too. I really think that we might be experiencing right now in our lifetime a real cultural shift, certainly with the people, but hopefully also with our representatives in a very lasting way. What are your thoughts on that? How do you see this next election going in Missouri? Because now we're going to be coming up on midterms before too long. And as you know, in Jefferson City, people are already campaigning.
Well, of course. And what I'm hopeful is that in the next election cycle, typically with the sitting incumbent president, his party would lose seats in that cycle. I'm hopeful that we're actually going to buck that trend. And well, I hope we buck it nationally. I hope that we can be successful on the state level. I think that there's only one way that we can do that. We have to show the people that we are tackling their policy priorities that they have set forth in the Republican Party. Unfortunately, for the last 8 years, we have ignored the will of the people. We failed to get policy priorities done, like initiative petition reform, and it has gone badly for us. And yet, the people really have still continued to support en masse the Republican Party, and I want them to continue to do that. But my fear and my concern is that they will only stick around and support us as long as they have faith that we're going to listen to them. And a lot of folks expect us to do the things that we say we are going to do on the campaign trail. And that's my message to my colleagues. And so we'll see if we can do that.
Yep. 100% agree with that. That seems everything you're saying right now is like the story of my whole tenure in Jefferson City. Like, I don't want to throw people that I served with under the bus, but as well as I do that you have some people that get elected and they're like, they go in there like they're ideologues. And that's not really a bad word. We want people going in there with ideas. We want people going in there with a set of principles. But then you also got people that are going in because they're just looking for a ladder to climb, or they just love getting their picture in the paper, at a ribbon cutting ceremony or something like that. So right now, what is next on the table for you in Jefferson City? What is your main effort and your main focus right now? Is it something that you have in committee, or is it a committee that you sit on, or is it any particular issue?
Well, it's interesting because Amendment 3 passed. we have essentially unrestricted abortion in the Constitution of Missouri. So it passed by a very, very narrow margin. And I think we deserve to give the people a second chance at that, to take a second look. Now, people have a different idea of what that should look like and how we should get that done. Personally, I believe that the constitutional amendment that went into our Constitution was written poorly, and I think it violates the state and federal Constitution. So I have a bill that essentially is an equal protection challenge to that amendment and would cause a judicial challenge to occur. That is my own personal opinion. That bill is going to be heard next week. I'm excited to present it. And hopefully we can actually say, okay, and I'm a constitutional purist, and I really want to start the conversation of when we are going to modify and amend our Constitution, we really need to be specific how we do that. It's our founding document. We should stop legislating through it and instead instill in it the guiding founding principles, just like our U.S. Constitution. And so that's the conversation I hope to have, and hopefully we'll see where it goes.
Well, is there any effort to amend the Constitution in terms of how we amend the Constitution? Because right now, you can amend our Constitution with a simple majority, and so you can barely have people in. I'll give you about 2 seconds to answer that question real quick because I hear the bumper music.
Yep, we're going to keep fighting the initiative petition reform battle just like we do every single year. Just say some prayers for us. You know how it goes.
Yeah, I know how it goes. Hey, we'll definitely be praying for you. That's State Representative Justin Sparks. This is Paul Curtman filling in for Tony Colombo here on Colombo and Company, News Talk STL. We'll be back in just a few.
Nobody on the beach. I feel it in the air. The summer's out of reach.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
At 4:25, Steve Bucci of Heritage on signal chat leaks and global conflicts. Should we dissolve the Department of Education? Alec Handel of ALEC to discuss.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 4 on News Talk STL.
If you are looking for a dentist for you and your family, I cannot recommend our family dentist, Dr. Matt Boscia at New Creation Dental Care. Enough New Creation Dental Care, the one-stop shop for all your family's dental needs. Dr. Boscia always expanding his services that he offers his patients, and that includes now the incredible all-on-4 full arch implant procedure. This is a full mouth restoration that can give you back your smile in as little as 1 day. No more suffering with damaged or missing teeth or poor fitting dentures. Just another great example of all of the things that Dr. Boscia and his staff at New Creation Dental Care can do for you and your family. Check out some amazing smile makeovers and learn more about the all-on-4 procedure. Plus, see everything that Dr. Boscia can do for you and your family right now by going to newcreationdentalcare.com.
Report cards are a good way to show how well your kids are doing in class and where they might need improvement. We at the Show Me Institute believe schools should get grades too, so parents can see how their child's school compares to others. That's why we came up with the Missouri School Rankings Project. Click on the website moschoolrankings.org and it's all there. Rankings and letter grades for all the schools in Missouri. The rankings are based on categories such as student performance in English language arts and math, ACT scores, and graduation rates. Then we take the rankings and come up with a grade point average, just like your child has. Each school and district has a grade, and the website is easy to use. And now we've added spending data for every district, so parents, taxpayers, and policymakers can see where the money is going. Don't you want to know how your child's school stacks up? Learn more at showmeinstitute.org. The Show Me Minute has been brought to you by Show Me Institute and Show Me Opportunity.
Cardinal Nation, it's time to paint the town red.
Opening day of Cardinal baseball at Busch Stadium.
And there's nothing else like it.
It's a St. Louis tradition.
Two things define St. Louis: Cardinal baseball and News Talk STL.
Play ball!
Opening day of Cardinal baseball at Busch Stadium is March 27th. Backed by our hometown favorites, DiGregorio Food, Best Buy Flooring, Pie in the Sky, and Abduction Dispensary.
Cardinal baseball!
This hour of Colombo and Company brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company. Paul Curtman, guest hosting, and this is a blast from the past, from 1987.
Let's spread the word around. Let's talk about this town. It's St. Louis. Yeah, you feel it in the air. See it everywhere. You should see us now. Now's the time. The excitement's here. The spotlight's on us now.
A lot of memories here, Paul, from 87 when this was a big promotional project for the city of St. Louis.
Well, you know what? In 1987, I was living in Michigan at the time, but I can totally envision myself, Stell, being at my grandparents' house, visiting for Christmas or Thanksgiving, and like watching something like this on St. Louis television. And the music sounds like it's right out of the 80s for sure.
It does.
Hey, we had Justin Sparks here in the last segment, and it's always great. And I want to encourage you folks. We've only got a few minutes here before we have to go to the top of the hour break. I want to tell you something that I think would serve you very good. You have people like Justin Sparks. You have other state representatives and state senators. They live in your communities. If you reached out to them, you'd be able to talk to them. You don't have to drive out to Jefferson City. You could actually probably invite them over to your house or a local coffee shop for coffee, and they would meet you for coffee because they like to spend time with the people. They like to spend time with you, probably, mostly, because you're voters and they like to secure your vote for the next election. But even if that's the case, like if that is your if that's how you get their ear, just call them up and talk to them. I said something, Stella, when we were talking to Justin, and I said that there's some people, they go there and they have ideas and they really want to affect some change. And then other people go there because they're looking for an opportunity to climb a political ladder. And then there's a third group of people. They're there because they think, all right, I made it into this club. And I remember hearing a representative talk about this early on in my tenure in Jeff City. They said, you know, when you get elected to the House or the Senate at the state capitol, you are somebody, right? You are somebody because people have to come to you and they try to push their influence on you so that way you can vote the way they want you to vote or spend money on things the way they want you to spend money on. And people are interested in talking to you, and you have to be able to be accessible and available in order to hear from them. But nevertheless, you still have these three different groups of people. They want to climb a ladder. They have ideas. They really want to affect some change. And in those people are mostly interested in listening to the people. Then you have the others who are just window dressing. Like when you get elected, Stell, you've probably seen this, Stell. You ever seen a congressman or a politician at a state capitol and they have a little pin on their lapel?
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
Yep. So those pins, they say member House of Representative, or else they'll say member Senate or state Senate or something like that.
Mhm.
And every year it's a different pin. It says the same thing. And that little pin is how the sergeant at arms knows whether or not you have access to the House floor. So it's not just a decorative piece. It is a piece that serves a function. It's kind of like your badge that says, I'm allowed to go here. I'm allowed to go on the floor of the House of Representatives. I do have access to this office. I can just walk in here. But there's a lot of people who really just want to wear that pin, and they collect these pins, and like these are like their trophies. They'll put them behind a glass case, you know, and it's important for them. Like that pin signifies validation of who they are as a person because they just had everybody vote for them. And so these are the window dressing people. These are the people that just like to, they're going to vote how everybody votes. They're going to get lost in the crowd of everybody else. And because they're that way, they're one of the more dangerous legislators because you can't always count on them to vote the way they said they were going to vote in a campaign. They're just trying to get lost in the crowd of all their peers voting to pass a bill or kill a bill. So just a peek behind the curtain, everybody. That you have that group of people, and then you have the people that are trying to climb a ladder. And the people that are trying to climb a ladder are also a little bit dangerous. They're kind of like the hired guns. Like these are the people that are very pragmatic about how to get things done. Sometimes that can be very, very helpful. But at the same time, it can be super dangerous because these are the people that'll make a super sharp turn to the left or right because they see an opportunity to grab the next highest rung on the ladder. Then you got the people that really care, the people that have ideas. And usually these people, they have something that they want to do once they get elected. They have legislation that they want to introduce. They already have a whole list of ideas that they're going in there with. And they always have a little bit more trouble working with their peers because they're trying to make sense out of people that don't really know why they're there when they themselves are there to get something done. So 3 different types of people that you got that you'll find in any Capitol building. This is Paul Curtman filling in for Tony Colombo here on Colombo and Company, right here on News Talk STL.
As someone who practiced law for nearly 20 years, I can tell you it's important to have your own attorney who can help you through all of life's transitions, assist you with all your legal needs. At Civia Law, they do just that. They specialize in helping you veterans as well with your veteran benefits. They also do estate planning, elder law, real estate, business matters, and more. The attorneys at Civia Law standing by to assist you and yours today. Check out all they've got to offer, including special online forms at civialaw.com. 833-995-WILL. That's 833-995-WILL.
Jewels on Hampton and St. Louis Hills is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches on site. Jewels on Hampton is a premier jeweler featuring Alvanza's jewel art designs with an exquisite selection of diamonds, semi-precious stone jewelry, and vintage watches. Their expert design team can restyle your jewelry to today's contemporary style. They also do jewelry and watch repair. Need extra cash? Jewels on Hampton is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches. Bring in your collectibles and clocks and sports memorabilia and figurines too. Jewels on Hampton, 4506 Hampton, just 3 blocks south of Chippewa, and jewelsonhampton.com. Call them at 314-752-5000, 314-752-5000, and jewelsonhampton.com. Jewels on Hampton.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness One. Wellness One is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on Newstalk STL. And you can visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm John Scott. The White House has withdrawn President Trump's nominee to be U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. White House correspondent Greg Clugston has that story.
The decision to pull Congresswoman Elise Stefanik's nomination was not made based on her ability to win confirmation. She had already won approval from the Foreign Relations Committee and was seen as among the least controversial cabinet picks. The White House decided to withdraw Stefanik's nomination because Republicans need her in the House, which has an extremely tight majority to help pass the president's agenda. Greg Clugston, Washington.
Also at townhall.com, school officials in Maine say they will not comply with a proposed agreement from President Trump's administration that would bar transgender athletes from participating in girls' sports. The Principals Association, which oversees high school sports in the state of Maine, and School Administrative District 51, which includes Greeley High School, both said that they will not comply with that agreement. The Commerce Department's figures on gross domestic product are in.
The measure of our nation's output of goods and services rose at an annual rate of 2.4% in the fourth quarter, down 0.7% from Q3. Overall, 2024 came in with a positive 2.8% GDP, but 0.1% lower year over year. Consumer spending gained 0.3% to 4% in Q4, but business investment fell 8.7%. In all, GDP in the last quarter of the Biden economy came in almost a full percentage point lower than economists' expectations. George Williams reporting.
The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services will eliminate 10,000 jobs as part of a major restructuring plan. The cuts include layoffs, early retirements, and voluntary separations encouraged through buyout offers. More on these stories at townhall.com.
We're talking about Relief Factor and how so many people enjoy better, more pain life because of it. If you're dealing with everyday pain, it makes sense you'd want to try it first. Well, Relief Factor makes that pretty pain-free too with their 3-week quick start kit for only $19.95, less than $1 a day. Relief Factor is a daily supplement that fights pain naturally. Relief Factor doesn't just mask pain temporarily, it helps reduce or eliminate pain. Visit relieffactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF, 800-4RELIEF for Relief Factor.
Are you having trouble hearing? Hearing loss can devastate the quality of your life. Now, there's an affordable fix for you or your loved one. Rated the best hearing aids of 2025 by Forbes Health, Audion Hearing has the highest quality hearing aids at the lowest prices, just $189.
I actually like them better than my old $5,000 hearing aids.
I could not believe how my hearing and life changed.
Join over 1 million happy customers by going to audionhearing.com. That's AUDIEN Hearing.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm meteorologist Leah Hill with your first alert forecast. Watching for some morning showers and the occasional rumble of thunder. It's pretty scattered activity out there, but at times you'll be using the windshield wipers, and it couldn't hurt to have some rain gear on hand today, especially if you're heading out to the Cardinals game. Do watch for some scattered showers and an isolated thunderstorm during game time. Temperatures nearing 70 degrees. It is a first alert weather day as some storms tonight could produce hail. That's your first alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Leah Hill.
This hour of News Talk STL brought to you by Jewels on Hampton, paying some of the highest prices for your gold, silver, diamonds, and more. Call 314-752-5000 or visit jewelsonhampton.com.
Fox News commentary.
Mixed signals, oh boy. The debacle involving a group chat gone awry is such a gift to the rabid Democrats, and I hate that for us. I'm Tommy Lahren. More next.
National security is at risk, and China controls most of the world's supply of antimony, a critical metal for military and defense technology. Military Metals Corp is taking action and securing a Western-controlled supply with projects in Europe and North America. Critical minerals are the backbone of modern defense. Now's the time to pay attention. The stock trades on the OTC under ticker MILIF. Call your broker today or go to www.militarymetalscorp.com to learn more.
A left-wing journalist to a group chat wherein you're discussing anything, let alone military actions, is a real mess up. There's no wordsmithing or mental gymnastics that can get around that. Someone messed up, and now the left has the talking point they've been scouring high and low for. Drat. Now, for his part, President Trump did address and acknowledge it, but I gotta be honest, the rest of the folks involved could be doing a better job explaining this and how the heck it happened to the American people. Should someone lose their job over it? Well, I hope not, but I think the best way to address it is directly. Take the thunder out, admit it was a screw up, promise it'll never occur again, and take full responsibility, because the smooth over is making it worse. The American people are forgiving, but we don't like to be given the runaround, left, right, or center. I'm Tommy Lahren, and you can watch my show, Tommy Lahren is Fearless, at Outkick.com.
Free speech is alive and well in America.
Thanks for taking my call.
Right here.
You know what's going on?
Have a great awakening.
You see through the smoke screen.
It's cool to be woke.
News Talk STL.
Until it's not.
News, analysis, opinion.
And welcome to News Talk STL. I'm your host, Paul Curtman, not the normal host for Colombo and Company. Tony Colombo is out today, and I'm filling in for Tony Colombo. So thanks, Tony, for the opportunity to fill in. I'm really excited to get to this next segment. We're going to get right in because our next guest might have to run a few minutes early. So I want to make sure we get to him right here on News Talk 1019, 94.1. Dr. Tobler, it's great to have you on Colombo and Company today.
Hey, Paul, great to talk to you. It's a great time to be an American, isn't it?
Oh, it sure is. Dr. Tobler, I was just telling the audience just last hour, I feel like all my dreams as a conservative are coming true. I feel like so much of what we've been expecting, hoping for, praying for, campaigning for over the last, really since the Tea Party brought so many more people into the movement, I feel like so much is happening that we've been praying for.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. I think we're in a little bit of a grace period because the Democrats, instead of coalescing and, uniting. They're only doubling down on the very policies and ideologies that got them, that took them from the dance. Shall we use that metaphor back in November? And I mean, they're in such disarray. I don't think it's helpful to step on the rake like they did the other day with the signal issue. I mean, I think we all know it's much ado about nothing, but the media and the Democrats and their loudmouth advocates will, find a way to make some hay of it. And they've done a fairly good job of that. We'll have to see where it all goes. I hope that we can have some progress either on the war front or, the tariffs begin to really show some movement in terms of bringing things back quicker. The one thing that I'm concerned about, though, Paul, is if we're going to get any budget deal done that includes that tax reconciliation, it includes that tax extension. I think here I'm reading some tea leaves and some reports that the Senate may drag their feet. Obviously, they seem to have some internal disarray, and if we don't get that thing passed by July, August, September, October, run up against that budget cliff again, the debt cliff, and all of a sudden, momentum could turn, just like it turns in a football game on the turn of an interception or a kickoff run back.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I was talking to a guest recently and told them that Republicans just have a way of we build all this momentum. We get so many different things in motion, and then we have a way of just completely sabotaging ourselves. And my fear, just kind of like what you said, is we're going to have some Republicans in the Senate, and they're going to use this as a bargaining chip for something else. And then the next thing you know, the whole discussion implodes in on itself. And the Republican Party, after all of this, after years and now months of working to get Donald Trump back in office and unifying the government, we just might completely sabotage ourselves.
Well, there's the other element of what is, I think, just collective national, it's probably an international phenomenon, except where people don't have cell phones. And that is our increasingly short, I guess I should say decreasingly short attention span. I mean, with all the incoming data and people becoming essentially having acquired ADHD, which used to be just a disease mainly of adolescents and young people, now it seems like everyone that I know of is very distractible. They have a short attention span, very little patience. They want things yesterday. We see that in business, in commerce. I see it in medicine. And so patience is in short supply. And politically speaking, it's going to take it took Reagan, a year and a half to see his policies start to turn things around. And whether Americans have the patience and, frankly, I guess I should say economic intelligence, and I don't mean IQ intelligence, but economic information and the ability to process it, to realize that you don't turn a ship that was heading towards the iceberg. You don't turn that around on a dime. It takes time to do that. So all these moving parts, some of which we can't predict, it'll be interesting to see how it all comes out.
Well, to that point about Americans having a short attention span, I mean, you just brought up the signal issue, and with the Democrats trying to capitalize on this, clearly either they've forgotten or they just think the American people are too stupid to remember about Hillary Clinton having her own server that was fully in a position to be entirely compromised when she was Secretary of State. And then you look at Democrats right now, like Gavin Newsom. I was talking with Tony about this actually earlier this week. Gavin Newsom, who has Charlie Kirk on his podcast, clearly trying to make an inroad. I really think that that's a clever move for the Democrats to actually try to, and it's probably a move that'll keep them alive a little bit longer if there's any hope for that, to try to actually find their way back to the middle in hopes of regaining some votes. But in order to do that, with all their crazy leftist policies, they would have to rely on a short attention span. But do you see the Democrats being able to come back from some of these crazy policies? And if so, is it because of that short attention span, or do you think that they're beginning to organize in a way that we need to be prepared for?
I don't think they're not organizing right now in a way we need to be prepared for. But Gavin Newsom is an existential threat and a real one to America. The guy's dangerous. He's slick as the devil and is as manipulating and conniving and enticing as the devil. And I mean literally the biblical devil. I'm not saying he's that person, but he's got that skill set. He's charismatic. He has already now shown the ability to absolutely switch his political worldview, or at least state that he switched it in order to make political hay. And he's been good at it. He's good at it. Those are interesting podcasts. You watch him, and suddenly he's like Mr. Middle of the Road, right? Maybe a little to the left of center, but he's a totally different guy. And the average American voter isn't as politically as attuned as the Newstalk STL listeners and others, who watch the news networks. And so I think he really is an existential threat politically. I think he's got a real good chance, no matter who's running in 2028, to make a real run for it. And I'll make that prediction right now. I think he could be their guy.
Yeah, I really think so too. Well, I have looked at lists that different news media organizations have put out. Here's who the Democrats have leading the party after 2024. And there's all these names. And I'm thinking there is no way, like Gretchen Whitmer, like there's just no way. I just don't ever see her being able to capture really any power or authority over the party at large. But I do think that Gavin Newsom, I think that the word you used is entirely appropriate. I think he is very slick. Like he's the kind of person that can talk to you and convince you that he is literally somebody else, even though, he can have his driver's license on the table right in front of you for you to see who he really is. But I think he is really that slick. But the only other hope that I think that the Democrats have, and I'm not trying to give the Democrat Party any advice, but I'm just trying to work this out in a conversation with you. I really think that the only other hope that they have, unless they have somebody that slick, is if they were to reach into the private sector, find somebody who's very successful, find somebody that could used to be a Republican. Like I think that the Democrats probably could do a job if they reach out to Adam Kinzinger, and got him to stick a D next to his name. I kind of think like at this point, as radical and as outrageous as the left has been, that's probably their only hope.
But at the end of the day, it's sort of like a team that's ahead by 10 or 12 points going into the middle of the fourth quarter, right? It's really yours to lose. And so in the end, no matter who they throw up, if Trump's agenda is carried out and is a winning agenda, as it should be, and the results are really coming full force as they should be, there really shouldn't be any contest, no matter who they throw at it. But if the economy isn't doing well, if the tariffs have actually hurt Americans more than they've helped them, and who knows what happens foreign policy wise, Donald Trump can only control so much. A lot of things that he can't control, some that he can. But I think more than anything, it's what the Congress does. If the Congress decides to help him initiate his agenda and actually things get done, this economy and frankly this policy swamp that we're at, if it doesn't get decentralized and return things to the states and more to a small R Republican governance style, well, okay, then there's a vulnerability there. I just don't think we should give them the vulnerability. But you and I aren't sitting in elected positions right now, so we'll have to hope that we can urge all of the listeners to get at these politicians and tell them to get it done.
Yeah. At this point in his presidency, he's signed, I think, over 100 executive orders. And when I look at these executive orders, some of these executive orders, many of these executive orders are things that Congress could do, should do. But at the same time, it does fall within, there's always a path for the president to use executive authority to try to do some of this as well. Sometimes I wonder if he's being as aggressive as he is because he just doesn't have the hope for Congress that maybe the rest of us wish we could have, because the honeymoon's eventually going to run out, kind of to your point. And I kind of think that maybe these executive orders are that. What's your thought on that? Do you think Donald Trump has the same amount of confidence in Congress that we all wish we could have?
The only confidence that I know Donald Trump has any confidence in is Donald Trump. And that's a bit of a criticism, actually, because I think that he sometimes is a little bit of a bull in a china shop when it comes to making friends in the right places and networking and getting things done in the way he needs to. I mean, that may sound counterintuitive, but for instance, with the EO that he just signed about election integrity, sounds good. It's a good optics. Everything's fine. But last time I checked, the states have an awful lot of constitutionally really have a lot of sway over how elections are run. I mean, even in Missouri, there's only so they should have more power. Our Missouri General Assembly hasn't done what it needs to do to try to make sure that only citizens vote all the time in all elections by changing the registration process and using their own form that does exactly what Donald Trump wants to do nationally. I think he's going to run into a lot of headwinds, as we've seen, either from litigation by private parties or from, the judges that are just doing what they do right away, usually on the heels of litigation. He's trying to really expand, the executive power, and I get that, but that could begin to really hurt him in a way, if you think about it, because if one after another of the EOs is slapped down, whether it's good or not, because it's been, with the argument being rhetorically, well, why are you getting out over your skis, Donald? One after another, the courts are saying you can't do this, you can't do this. It's Congress's job. Whether or not it's true, the perception is that maybe they're not thinking it through enough. A little bit of a sort of a reckless idea steps into the sway. So I think that there's a danger to overreaching on these things and doing too many of them. It appears it's sometimes a bit manic. And I'm just saying, not me, not, again, the people I think who understand what he's trying to say and what he's trying to do, but people who are more centrist and who are more moderate, the kind of people that really help push him over the edge this time and get him really across the finish line, they're going to begin to wonder. Because remember, they're not as politically engaged, they're not as constitutionally or frankly economically informed many times. They're just not as engaged as many on the on the right and the left, on either far end. And that's my concern, is just the optics of things. It plays to the base, but at some point it may be counterproductive.
Yeah, I think that is spot on. And there's also the flip side of the coin. Like, if it's not just the fact that he's issuing these executive orders, trying to expand executive power, and they get slapped down by a judge, but then what if he expands executive power and it sticks? Well, then we have another election coming up in 4 years. And this has always been one of my fears as different presidents try to lead the country and executive power continues to expand. For every action, there's an equal or opposite reaction. And eventually those chickens are going to come home to roost, and we're going to have another president that maybe we don't like so much trying to use the same executive.
Well, you're so right. Yeah, you're so right. I mean, let's think about it. The gnashing of teeth and the wailing that we on the right did when Obama famously said, if Congress isn't going to do it, I have my pen and a phone, right? Well, hello. I mean, how is this any different? Why aren't we, in order of being, having intellectual integrity, why isn't everyone on the right saying, what are you doing, Donald Trump? What the heck are you doing? We criticize Obama for that. But that's sort of the fickle nature of politics, isn't it? We tend to look the other way and give grace to the people on our side, not so much on the other side. And it cuts both ways. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I see three things that Donald Trump is doing that any one of these could be a standalone legacy for him. I think the way he is really beginning to upset the apple cart, and I mean that in a good way, because he's using tariffs as a negotiating chip, but at the same time, he's also using them as a very real economic tool. And then I also see what he's wanting to do with the Department of Education by sending all of that back to the states. Either one of those is legacy building agenda. And then the third one is Doge. And this is one of those things, like, he's not really expanding his executive reach by the creation of Doge, because Doge is supposed to work with Congress to eliminate all this fraud, waste, and abuse. Of those three, which one do you think is the most impactful to the country in the short term or the long term?
I think education is the least risky and the highest impact. There's no doubt that very few people who have their children in public school are totally satisfied with the way the public schools are running. And it's always a pretty good bet that Americans will vote for choice over mandated this or mandated that. And for the most part, people do not, in at least 35 of the states, not have the choice that they would like to have. So that, to me, is one that you can argue on constitutional grounds, on pragmatic grounds. I mean, it just makes so much sense. The others, Doge, I mean, I'm talking to people who I respect, who are talking with people that are having to make decisions and take people out of commission or out of work, or 1099 employees that they rehire every year because there's jobs to be done, but it depends on maybe the current circumstances or the projects that are being done. And they're laying people off on the backs of these orders. But then when they need to rehire them because, the judge says something, or maybe, next year they might need to rehire them, those workers are going to be elsewhere. Will have found another job. So the way Doge has unfortunately been drawn out, great idea. I wish it would have been a little bit more of an informatic audit kind of a thing, informing the cabinet and then telling the cabinet members, hey, you got to make a 15% cut or a 20% cut. You figure out how to do it, but that's what you need to do. I have, like I said, I have personal, knowledge of people who are truly doing a job that we'd all agree needs to be done. And they are actually turning sour, former Trump voters that now are very, very sour, manager level, because they're having to lay off employees that there's a job that maybe isn't needing to be done now, but will need to be done, 6 months from now. And where are they going to find the qualified, skilled person to do that? Because the person will have flown the coop by then. These are complex issues. It's a good idea on paper. I think it's great to expose the inefficiencies, the waste, the fraud, the abuse. But I'd like to let people maybe let it simmer a little while, let the information marinate, and then turn it into action at the department or agency level. Just slow it down just a hair. But I understand what they were doing, trying to make high impact, and certainly are informing us that things are so far out of control. It's unbelievable.
I really think that when Donald Trump was giving his speech to the joint chambers a few weeks ago, and he was just going down that list, here's this money for this much money was spent for that, really, really eye-opening. And I think he's also exposing the left, because now the left they're trying to defend all the reckless spending. I do think it's interesting that you said that the Department of Education was the least risky. I would have figured that would have been one of the most risky, just because it deals with education. It seems like Americans, we're always talking about education, but I hadn't thought of it in that particular context about it being the least risky, because the nature of public education and parents' overall dissatisfaction. I think that was a really good point.
Well,
what about tariffs?
Well, as I said about Doge, Doge and tariffs too. I didn't address that. My son works for a company that does business, or an overseas company, does business with the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. They're really struggling because they've got some contracts for some super big presses. They do a lot of business here, create a lot of jobs here, and they don't know what to do now, whether they're even going to cut any more contracts with Americans. And there's not people in America that can deliver the same goods. They're very highly specialized stuff. And so, not only he, but people in his orbit, now that they're not going to be getting contracts because of the 25% tariff that went in, well, you just took a bunch of conservative voters and turned them at least a little sour, if not totally sour. So I think it may help some people, but it may hurt a lot of people too, sort of directly, immediately, high impact kind of stuff. Education, on the other hand, how does education choice, how does returning the money and the influence and the decision making to the states hurt anyone? If people are happy with their public school, they stay in their public school. If they don't like it, they can do something else. So I just think that, and here's the other thing: the decentralization of the education needs to happen for long-term impact, because unless we turn the clock back on the progressive socialist mindset that educators have brainwashed our children with, mainly in our public schools that are unionized, unless we turn that back, in the long, long run, does anyone really think when kids are told in one way or another that, pretty much the country is nothing like, Mike Huckabee and Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan and, pick your favorite patriotic conservative say, it's really a bad place. And we've been bad to people, and it's not a good place, and we need to change it. People, kids come, who do you think they're going to vote for over the long term? It's this inexorable slide towards progressivism and towards anti-American, anti-Constitution. So that's why I think we really got to get the education thing turned around, and need to do it. This is a good start. with getting rid of this department.
Super, super good analysis, Dr. Tobler. I think you might have changed my mind on this because as the former chair of the Committee of Government Efficiency in Jefferson City, like my focus has always been finance. We got to make sure government's not spending money because you can tie economic freedom and civil liberties together. And I feel like the bigger government gets, the more freedom we're going to lose. But when you look at education, the way you just explained it, the longest running impact that we could have, and also just affecting the way we think about government and the way we think about freedom by removing progressive ideology, especially when it comes under the guise of government mandates and it's tied to federal funds. That's been really good for me. People, News Talk STL audience, you heard it here. Dr. Tobler has changed my mind. I think that this should be his legacy, what he does with education now.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, he's got great opportunities. Any or all three of those would be super good because they all have a lot of power. I'm just anxious to see if we can get at least one of them across the finish line.
Yeah, I do hold out hope that we're going to get something across the finish line. I do think between these three, clearly he has some executive authority that he's wielding with tariffs. I do think that he can do the same thing with Department of Education. But then again, whether it's that or whether it's Doge, there's gonna be some room. Like, it's so crazy to me that we're even talking like this. Like, there's got to be something Congress has to do because really they're supposed to be in charge of all of this. Like, they could get rid of a department if they wanted to. They could pass tariffs if they wanted to. They could eliminate wasteful government spending if they wanted to. But here we're having a conversation about Donald Trump, the president, using his executive pen to do all three of these things, rather than talking about our own congressmen. Like, things are just flipped upside down on their head now.
Yeah. Well, and let's not forget, Mike Johnson said it the other day, the Senate will never go along with it. But one of the best things that on both sides of the aisle, if they thought ahead, that they could get rid of or at least somehow tame by reducing the number of or the jurisdiction of would be the federal courts. I mean, those people have gotten out of control. Johnson said he wanted to do it the other day. If the Democrats were smart and thought about how, policies can actually help you if you agree with them because they're not going to hurt you later, that would be one of them. We'll have to see where it ends up.
Yeah, well, I really hope that we see some movement, especially on those federal, because they get shopped all the time, like they're doing right now. They just get shopped.
Yeah.
Dr. Tobler, it's been great talking to you. I know that you got to run. I know that you got some patients to see, but thanks for joining us here on Colombo and Company.
Always a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Kurt.
All right. Hey, this is Paul Curtman filling in for Tony Colombo on Colombo and Company right here on News Talk STL. Hey, when we come back, we're going to start to wrap up the show a little bit. I want to talk about some of these tariffs, and I also want to talk a little bit about the economy. I think we got some turbulent times ahead, so let's get into that. Maybe we can chat about that a little bit, Stel. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
As across the hill and the town lit up.
Hey, thank you very much for taking my call.
News, analysis, opinion.
Yes, I just want you to know what a breath of fresh air you people are.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Are the days of a personal doctor gone? Not at Body of Health Direct Primary Care. I'm Dr. Randy Tobler to share how our design is putting the care back into healthcare. Plain and simple, our members, not insurance companies, get our exclusive focus. That means same or next day appointments, responsive answers to your concerns, and a no-spin, big tool chest approach. It's about time you get serious time devoted to your medical needs. To learn about healthcare the way it ought to be, schedule a discovery call today at bodyofhealth.com. That's bodyofhealth.com.
This is Larry Connor's commentary on News Talk STL.
To all the useful idiots, you heard me, to all the useful idiots on college campuses and elsewhere crying out for the Palestinians, listen up. You cry out from the river to the sea, which calls for wiping out Jerusalem. You say you're supporting Palestinians, but you're really supporting Hamas, a terrorist group of cowards who hide under baby beds in Gaza. Well, now Palestinians living in the midst of Gaza are rising up against Hamas. Video surfacing showing Palestinians in the streets crying out, we are peaceful. We're being used as human shields by Hamas, which we know is a fact. The video is slow to be broadcast on legacy media, if at all, because this is not good for Hamas. In the meantime, Hamas claims those in the streets are terrorist agents, that most Palestinians support Hamas. they continue that story. So how about you useful idiots thinking you have a right to physically attack or slur Jews, some claiming Palestinians love Hamas? Do you ignore this uprising if it continues? Do you continue to spew hate? Or do you think maybe I'm wrong?
Get more Larry Connors on Larry Connors USA.
Tonight at 6 on News Talk STL.
Question: do you know what vermiculite is? It is an insulation in the attics of hundreds of thousands of homes and public buildings. Looks like kitty litter, but often contains asbestos. Wellington Environmental is the largest company in the Midwest that can remove that hazard for you. Wellington has what is called the General, a powerful industrial vacuum that can suck vermiculite out of the attic. Hang on, there's something else you should know. Many of you might qualify for up to a $4,000 rebate. You should at least contact Wellington to see if you qualify. And here's something else. Wellington arrives at the time they give you, not sometime within 4 hours. 314-644-4930, 644-4930. WellingtonSTL.com, WellingtonSTL.com, Wellington Environmental, your world cleaner, better, safer. Be well with Wellington.
News Talk STL is proud to have Doug Voss of Safe Bunny Radio as part of our lineup each week. Doug has been a staple on the St. Louis radio airways for many years as one of the leading financial experts in the area. You can now hear Doug and Safe Bunny Radio 3 times every week yet on News Talk STL. But in case you miss anything, you can check it all out at DougVossSafeBunnyRadio.com. What else do our listeners need to know, Doug?
Simply put, I focus on helping pre-retirees and retirees build, preserve, and protect retirement assets, and I've been helping my clients solve their insurance and financial needs for the past 33 years. I also strive to educate my clients on how to prepare for retirement, minimize the impact of market volatility on their assets, and deal with the challenges of increased longevity. Call me today at 844-676-SAFE. That's 844-676-7233.
Doug Voss is a registered representative. Securities offered through DHL Securities, LLLP. Member FINRA and SIPC.
On the next Larry Connors USA.
The left is calling for the resignation of Pete Hegseth because of what was released on the Signal chat.
Larry Connors USA. Now, weeknights 6 until 8 on News Talk STL. If you have a phone, you have a radio.
Wherever I'm at, home, car, wherever.
Download the all-new News Talk STL app.
If you have a phone, you have a radio. Just the convenience on the phone. Streaming live on the mobile app.
Love the new app.
And listen anytime,
Everywhere.
anywhere.
And welcome back to Colombo and Company. This is Paul Curtman filling in for Tony Colombo right here on News Talk STL. We got just a few more minutes. Stella, I want to talk with you a little bit about the economy. I don't believe that people understand. Maybe they do. I don't want to cut people short. But what Trump is doing with tariffs, this is a huge change in the way America perceives its relationships with other countries around the world in terms of our own economic policy. And just the other day, it was just yesterday, right? Just yesterday, Donald Trump announced that we were going to be, he went ahead and signed some executive orders and he made an announcement about tariffs on automakers. And Stell, could you go ahead and play, I think it's clip number 10. Clip number 10, our very own homegrown Will Scharf. You probably see him on the news. He's been a guest and in the studios at News Talk STL before. But if you watched the press conference yesterday, it was Will Scharf who is actually handing Donald Trump all these executive orders. They seem to have a very good relationship. But Will, when he introduced the executive order on the tariffs, he had some pretty interesting things to say. Stell, could you go ahead and play clip 10 for us?
As you stated, we've prepared for your attention a proclamation imposing a 25% tariff on foreign-made cars and light trucks. This is in addition to tariffs that are already in place on those goods. In addition to, as you said, spurring increased domestic manufacture of cars and trucks, we expect that these tariffs will result in over $100 billion of new annual revenue to the United States of America in tariff revenue.
I think ultimately we could probably anywhere from $600
billion to $1 trillion will be taken in over the relatively short-term period, meaning a year from now.
$600 to $1 trillion a year from now. That's Donald Trump's prediction, what we could possibly get. But as Will Scharf said, this is what we believe is going to bring the country $110 billion worth of new annual revenue. Now, when he's talking about that number, he's talking about revenue from outside the country. So he's talking about tariff-borne revenue. He did mention when he was introducing that executive order the fact that there would be domestic manufacturing growth in the U.S. as a result of this. And we can see this from just recently, just within the last week or week and a half, Honda had announced that they were thinking about building a factory in Mexico. But because of the tariffs, they don't want to incur a 25% cost to import vehicles. So rather than importing them, let's just have the cars made in America. So this is going to be one of the reactions that we wind up seeing from companies and manufacturers overseas as they start to deal with these tariffs. We are currently dealing with the economic circumstances of what it takes to produce a vehicle or what it takes to produce anything. When you hear politicians talk about all of our jobs that have gone overseas, the reason they've gone overseas is because it becomes too expensive to make it here. Donald Trump's tariffs make it too expensive for auto manufacturers to produce anywhere but the U.S. And if they choose to continue to manufacture their vehicle anywhere else, well, then they're going to have to pay us for it. Stel?
Two other automotive companies that are also making the move. One would be Hyundai, along with Honda, and then Rolls-Royce. And I know a lot of folks don't really focus much on Rolls-Royce because, yeah, you think of cars, but they also are a huge manufacturer of jet plane engines. And putting those together, that's a huge shift. And Trump has had this attitude, and I agree with him that the U.S. has been getting screwed over the last how many decades with situations where tariffs are on the other end, and we're the ones who wind up paying all the time. So I think he wants to level the playing field, and I think he's trying his best to do that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think he's doing that right now. And I know that there were companies that were talking about where they're going to do business even before Trump won in the November election. Like just the fact that we have an executive in the White House talking about such dramatic changes to these economic relationships that we have, it's putting everybody else in the world kind of in a very precarious situation where they have to figure out, okay, well, if we're going to continue to do business at all, we need to find a way to do business where it's just a little bit less expensive. And by Donald Trump using tariffs as this negotiating chip, whether it's with security with Canada or Mexico, he's also using it, and we're beginning to bring jobs back to the U.S. Hey, real quick, Stel, could you play? We have another clip. It's clip number 7. This is an automotive worker. He worked for 25 years in a vehicle manufacturing plant and retired member of the UAW. Could you please play clip number 7?
There's a lot of capacity. There's a lot of underutilized plant space, floor space. They can move product back into existing plants. They can expand and add on to existing plants. There's a lot of people that are on layoff or working a bare minimum 40 hours. We want to rock and roll and work 6 and 7 days a week. That's where the money's at for the workers. And the people in Macomb County and the Detroit area want work. We want overtime. We want jobs. We want new facilities. So we welcome this. Tariffs are going to be an excellent thing for the auto industry here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. And I think that he's right. I think it's going to be good for the auto workers in the U.S. Now, the left is going to try to scare people because you're looking at the volatility in the stock market right now. We already saw the S&P drop below 10% from its all-time highs. And that sudden drop happened in about 3 weeks or less. And the left has wasted no time trying to fear-monger the people. But listen, markets go up and they go down and they respond to economic news and economic policy. They respond to things like this. But Donald Trump said in his speech to the joint chambers just a couple weeks ago, we're going to see a little bit of volatility. But there's better news on the other side of this. You might want to call it growing pains, growth pains. There you go. Hey, Stel, it's been great to be with you today. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed having an opportunity to fill in for Tony Colombo. This is Paul Curtman filling in for Tony, Colombo and Company, News Talk STL.
President Trump is making big changes at the Department of Education. How will this impact Missouri schools? Find out at the Show Me Education Town Hall, April 3rd, 6 to 8 p.m. at the DePere Lodge. Get legislative updates, meet with school board candidates, learn how we can all work together at all levels of government to raise test scores and improve outcomes for all Missouri students. Be an informed voter on these important issues. Don't miss this event. April 3rd, 6 to 8 p.m., DePere Lodge. All details at newstalkstl.com. We'll see you there.
You have 31 days to get the best deal for windows or doors. Renewal by Andersen having a sale cutting $289 off each window, $829 off each patio or entry door. No payments, no interest for 18 months. Renewal by Andersen. Call pound 250 and say windows. Pound 250, say windows. It's that easy. Renewal by Andersen. RBASTL.com.
It's almost time for baseball's return to St. Louis. Get ready to watch your Cardinals take the field at Busch Stadium. From home runs and fireworks to historic plays and rising stars, there's no better way to catch Cardinals baseball than with thousands of friends, old and new, in the sea of red. Grab your tickets now to join the fun in Cardinals Nation. Visit Cardinals.com for tickets and info. St. Louis Cardinals for the Lou.
Game tickets? Check.
A round of cold beers? Check.
Ballpark hot dogs? Check.
Baseball is back and nothing beats a night out with the guys.
Or ladies.
At a Cardinals game.
From thrilling games and mouthwatering eats to the iconic ballpark energy, Busch Stadium is the ultimate spot for you and your crew to dive into America's favorite pastime.
Make your next night out the best one yet. Join us at Busch Stadium, where every hour is happy.
For tickets, visit Cardinals.com.
St. Louis Cardinals for the Lou.
Attention, reptile lovers. Ready to discover your next scaly friend? Welcome to the Show Me Reptile Shop, your ultimate destination for fascinating reptiles and exotic pets. With 3 convenient locations in Troy, St. Peters, and Springfield. We have an amazing selection of snakes, lizards, turtles, and more. Whether you're a seasoned herpetologist or a curious beginner, we've got the perfect pet waiting for you. Show Me Reptile Shop.